I used to be a shopaholic. Even just looking back at my videos a few years ago, it's obvious I was buying way more than I truly needed. Browsing shopping apps on my phone mindlessly, getting in on sales, walking around the shops to see what's new in, and just the thrill of securing a bargain, only for it to stay hidden in my closet with tags still on months later, until I ended up with a wardrobe full to the brim. I thought that was what abundance means. Lots of options equals a lot of happiness, right? Turns out what I actually needed was just less, because all of those things stuffed in my wardrobe, in my cupboards, in my kitchen, all of those things ended up stressing me out rather than bringing me joy. If you also struggle with impulse shopping, then stick around for this video, because you and me both probably could use a reminder of some of these questions. These are all questions I have used myself and still use to this day, because sometimes we need a reminder of what we truly need to buy, what we truly want, versus things we're just kind of influenced to buy that are not going to bring us any value, any joy, and they're just going to clutter up our space and be a total waste of money. Can I afford this? And by afford, I mean not putting it on a credit card. My husband and I both stopped using credit cards a few years ago. So aside from, mortgage for the house, we don't get anything on credit. We only buy things with the money that we actually have in our bank accounts. And I think especially if you're like myself and you sometimes struggle with impulse shopping, this can be a really good way to kind of curb that and stop yourself, because if you don't have that money in your bank account, you're just not going to go and buy an item you don't really need. Of course, everyone's situation is different, but for me, it's actually a good thing, because that means I'm a lot more aware of how much I'm spending, how much I can save from that money, and I'm not tempted to buy a lot of things that I actually can't afford, and that in the long run can really add up to a big amount of that, which is not what I want. How much space do I have in my home for this item? I used to buy items regardless of this. I would never think about where I'm going to put it, where I'm going to store it, if I have space in the room for it. Even thinking back now, when we used to live in this tiny flat in London, I bought my son this massive Thomas and Friends, like the Thomas Tank Engine, but that massive toy took up a lot of space in our already tiny living room, and it wasn't something that he really got that much play out of. So nowadays, I really try to think, do I have a space for this? Where is it going to go? Is it just going to be lying around in the living room? Is it going to be something we kind of stumble on and it's going to become annoying? Is it going to be in the way? And if we don't have a space for it in mind, then we might reconsider that. Is this a need, a want, or an I'm bored kind of purchase? Because I used to have a lot of those. Sometimes when we're dissatisfied with other things in our life, like for example, when we've gone through infertility, there were obviously lots of things in my life I couldn't control, and a lot of things I was dissatisfied in, both my body, how it wasn't doing what it was supposed to do, how life didn't look how I imagined it to look. And so when we go through moments like that, it can be really easy to turn to shopping and kind of accumulating a lot of stuff to try to compensate for that. So I really try to ask myself these days, what is the actual intent behind this purchase? Is it because I want it? Do I truly have a need for this? And this can really help me be a bit more realistic with the items that I buy and bring into our house. Is this an urgent purchase, or is this something that can go on my wish list for a few weeks? I have been using a wish list for years now, and it is one of the best things I've ever done, I think, for both myself and for my kids. It's the simplest thing you can do. You see something you like and you feel this urge to buy it. You start getting this desire for that item, because the marketing we see all around us is very good at creating a desire in us, and that's what it's supposed to do. And I think as long as it's done ethically, there's nothing wrong with that. It's all about matching the right customer with the right product and solving a need for them. That's absolutely fine. I think it's when we start feeling like we need all of these items and we start accumulating all of those, then it can become a bit problematic when we're surrounded by clutter that we didn't really need. So putting an item on a wish list can give you a bit of space from that, because something I have learned in marketing for my business as well is the urgency. They always want to put a time limit. If they have a sale, it's going to end in this amount of days. And I use that too. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think putting the product or the item on a wish list for yourself can really assess if it's a product you really, really want, if it's a product you really need. And when we see a sale, we see that urgency created by that marketing campaign. I think it's really important to remember, even with my products, if you see my courses or my products for sale at a discount, you know it's gonna end at a certain point. But any company, any brand you see out there is very, very likely to have another sale in the future. So maybe you're not ready to buy it right now. Maybe it's not the right time for you. It might be in the future. So for me, it's really helpful to remember, just because this sale is ending at this point, it doesn't mean there's not going to be one in the future. If I miss out on this one, there's going to be other opportunities. And so it really helps with that kind of FOMO feeling. You're not missing out. And if it's something you truly, truly need and want, you're going to find a way to get it later on. When it comes to our wardrobe and clothes, one thing I like to ask myself is, where am I going to wear this? If I pick up an item and I think it looks really cute in the shop, I try to think of a few scenarios where I would wear this. And then I also try to think, okay, how often do those scenarios occur in my life? Like, for example, if I see a nice dress and I think, oh, this would be really cool for this type of event. I also try to ask myself, okay, how many events like that have I had in the past year or in the past 2 years? And if it's not very often, it might be a good idea to only have, you know, one or two of those items rather than a whole wardrobe full of them that we only use once every couple of years. Is this an item I see myself wearing a lot? There's this whole trend online I see about people buying a whole new wardrobe for one holiday. You know, you've got a summer holiday coming up, and then some people would go out and buy a whole new wardrobe for it. They will post it on social media because that's what we do these days. Nothing wrong with that if you have the money, if you have the space for it, if you maybe declutter some older items you don't want anymore. But for myself, when I go on holiday, I will look through the clothes that I already have and pick the outfits from there. Maybe buy one or two items that are special if I really, really feel the need for it. Just a quick reminder that you don't have to buy a whole new wardrobe for a new event or for a holiday or for whatever you might have coming up. For me, I try to have a wardrobe that's full with a lot of great basics because those work really well for my lifestyle, and then a few fun pieces that I can style in a lot of different ways, and that's what's worked really well. And I can wear all of those items or most of them in pretty much all of the scenarios I have in my life. Does this fit me? When we're in the shop, this is what I used to do. I remember I once bought a jumper that was too big on me. It was a few sizes up, and I liked the jumper. I liked how it looked. Obviously, it didn't fit me right, but the reason why I bought it is because it was in the sale and they only had that size left. They didn't have my size. Now, looking back, kind of realistically, I should not have bought that jumper in a way bigger size, right? I absolutely regretted that purchase down the line because usually if it's an impulse buy like that, we tend to not hold on to it for very long. We tend to not appreciate it for very long. So now when I buy things, they need to fit me. If it doesn't fit me, I'm gonna leave it in the shop, regardless of how cute it is, regardless if I miss out on that great sale, because I know further down the line, when I want to put on that outfit, I'm not gonna like that it's not fitting me properly. Does this go with my current wardrobe, or do I need to buy some extra items for it? For example, when I look in the shop, sometimes there's this cute top, but it's got like some, interesting cutouts here. And then I start to think to myself, okay, if I buy this top, I'm gonna need to buy some sort of special bra to go with it because otherwise the bra straps will show. And it can be the same when we buy something that doesn't go with the items we already have. And I'm not saying you shouldn't buy it, but it's just something to keep in mind that if you do buy this and then you need another pair of trousers to go with it, or maybe you need another pair of shoes to go with this, then it's kind of going to add a lot to your expenses that month. It's just something to keep in mind when we're making purchases like that. Do I really like this item? Or do I want it because I saw it on an influencer's page? I'm not knocking anyone down because I used to do that. I used to do a lot of hauls, showcasing a lot of items, and I still sometimes share items that I love wearing. But I think it's really important to be realistic with, again, what's gonna fit our lifestyle and what we really like to wear ourselves. I can see this beautiful skirt or like co-ord suit on this influencer, and I can just think it's the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen. And it's a beautiful piece of fashion. But when I think about my lifestyle, I'm probably never gonna wear that if I buy it. And it just doesn't really make sense in my world. When it comes to more decor, storage, home items, a few questions that really help me. Do I have a place to display it in my home? I can't tell you how many times I've bought pieces of artwork, decor, vases, little knickknacks, everything like that, but I didn't have a space for them, or I didn't even think about it in the shop. I just thought it was cute, so I wanted to own it. I would buy those items, bring them home, and then I would just kind of shuffle them around a lot because maybe I realized I didn't really like them in my space. And I think it's really great when we buy decor items to actually have a spot for them, or at least kind of a rough area where we're gonna put them. Do I have space in my loft, garage, or any other storage areas we have? Do I have space to store it there until the next season? This goes especially for things like, Easter items, Halloween, Christmas, all of those kind of seasonal pieces. If I go out and buy Christmas stuff, I'm always gonna keep in mind, okay, how much storage space do I have left in those bins or in the loft, and how much can I realistically fit in there without it feeling like it's a pile, a mountain of stuff that I have to dig through every year. Because my goal is to be able to easily access everything, easily find things when I need them. And it might sound like a good idea to get a whole range of cushions to put on our sofa, for example, for Christmas. And then when the season is over, we find that, those cushions take up a whole lot of space and we might not have that space available. That's when we start ending up with clutter kind of infiltrating in all of these areas of our homes. Does it go with what I already have in my home? So I can think here about not just the space, but also, the colors, the textures that we already have. Does it go with the style I usually prefer? Or is it something completely out of the ordinary that, I buy this blue pillow I'm gonna put here and then I realize, it doesn't match with anything, and then I feel like I need to go out and buy more blue stuff to go with it. And it's kind of like this cycle that goes on, right? So for me, it's really important to be mindful of these things. Does it go with what I have? And if not, maybe it's not for me, or at least not for me right now. When it comes to storage containers, I try to think to myself, okay, am I buying this storage container for a specific purpose? Do I have a specific area in mind that I'm trying to organize? Or am I just buying it because it's some cute storage in the shop? And here's something I learned the hard way. A storage container is not the cure to clutter problems. As much as I bought a lot of bins and baskets and lots of different systems, I've tried so many things in my adult life to keep things organized. And then I realized when I have less items, I don't have to stress so much about having the right bin or the right system because it's simply easier to keep things organized. It doesn't take as much effort, it doesn't take as much space, and so finding a good bin to go with it is quite easy. So when we buy storage items, it's really great to first declutter the space, make sure we only keep the things we truly need in there, and then we can assess, okay, this is how much the space is. We can measure it out, make sure the items fit in there, make sure the storage container fits in the spot, in the cupboard. That way we can make a better decision of storage containers that are actually helpful rather than a waste of money. For the kitchen, for example, I like to ask myself, do I already have an item that serves a very similar purpose? I have contemplated quite a lot in the past few years whether I should get an air fryer because, it's everywhere. Everybody's using it. You might have one yourself and you might find it really useful. And I'm not saying it's not useful. I'm pretty sure it is. Looking at my own kitchen and my own space, I don't have a lot of counter space. It's okay. It's very decent, especially now that it's decluttered and I have my working area. If I add an air fryer, which is quite bulky, next to, for example, my oven, then it's gonna take up a lot of space in that area. It's gonna make everything feel just a bit more cramped. And I realized, an air fryer and an oven, they're kind of similar, aren't they? Yes, the air fryer might cook things just a bit quicker, but for me, I felt like it wasn't worth it. I'm just gonna use my oven. Not saying there's anything wrong with owning an air fryer. If you love yours, it might be great for you. It just wasn't a good decision for me. And it might be the same with lots of little gadgets and things that we see on Amazon, things that we see online that we think, oh, that's gonna be a great kitchen gadget. It's gonna save me so much time. But actually, a lot of the time, it doesn't truly work that way. And one question I love asking myself in the kitchen, when I go to a food shop, first thing I will check my cupboards. And on the weeks when I don't do this, I notice that I spend more on my food shop and I accidentally end up with things I already have. I might buy extra pasta because I feel like, I'm pretty sure I'm running out. And then I get the food shop and I realize, actually, I did have pasta. I was just in the back there. So checking our cupboards, our fridge, our freezer can be really helpful before doing a food shop. What are some of your questions that you asked yourself before doing any shopping? Is there anything that kind of helps you curb that impulse buying? Let me know. That would be really helpful for me too. And I hope you're having a really lovely day and I will chat to you soon.